I'm Georgina, and I have an Asperger's. Thanks, the last few questions into that. Asperger's has always been around, but let's face it, it's only recently that's actually been considered as a disability. I mean, before now, people just thought it was a kind of autism, and when they were kids, they just thought they were well-being brats. Thing is, because of its newness, I think a lot of people don't really understand what it is, even people with the condition. I want to try and explain that to them.
I think
You said you've lived with it. What does Asperger's mean to you?
well, they're all the definitions that you find because of the job that I've done and am doing. They're the official definitions that you get when you study it and read about it. And so neurodiversity, I think, is a very good description from the point of view of how the brain works. It just means that people are differently wired, really. And then if you're working with people, you could say it's like autism, but it's different. And the difference is that there's people with Asperger's have a self-awareness, that people who are ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, which is the term that's used for people with autism, that they don't have that self-awareness. So to my mind, it's if you don't fit in socially, someone with Asperger's may wish that they could fit in and feel rather sad about not being able to be part of the group, whereas someone with autism would have a less awareness that they wouldn't be too bothered about not fitting in with the wishing you could be part of something and feeling a bit left out and a bit sad about that. I know it's an official definition, but I can see that there's that. But I think it's having difficulty knowing what people really mean, and sometimes not being able to respond to it in a way that the other person appreciates. So you can't always read people, and that's reading people in terms of reading the body language as well as understanding what's being said. I think it can be a feeling of really being able to focus on things. I think very often people with Asperger's can be the highest flyers that there are, because you know what you're doing, and you get your vision on it, and nothing deters you from it, and you study it really thoroughly and really understand all aspects of whatever it is that you're focusing on.
The Asperger's obsession.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think that's part of the reason I started writing stories in the first place. I started creating my own worlds as my way of dealing with the whole Asperger's, no friends bit. But even a fantasy world gets lonely after a while.
I think there's also a difficulty with flexibility. So if change comes, it can be quite difficult to adjust. So someone with Asperger's knows where everything is and likes to know that this is what I do here at this time, and knows what to expect. People with Asperger's like to know what to expect. And if it doesn't come about in the way that you expect it, that can really throw someone. And they can be uncomfortable. They can become very distressed if it doesn't go the way that they've kind of programmed themselves to work. And having things repeated in a way that they're comfortable with repeating things. And I think that's quite important too.
Some students on campus have Asperger's at the moment.
It is quite difficult to give you that percentage.
Rough estimate.
Quite often you've got people who've been defined as Asperger's, and that's very clear. We've got a lot of other students who are defined as having specific learning differences, and that includes Asperger's. Now in that sort of term, that's a higher percentage. So we could be looking at sort of 10% or so.
Okay, as you know, Asperger's is sometimes known as Aspergers Syndrome. What do you think about the word syndrome, and do you think it should be added?
That's what I know it as. I think it's shortened because it's more convenient, because the man who discovered whatever Asperger's is. You know, that's the name of the man. He was Mr. Asperger, or Herr Asperger, I should think. But it is a syndrome, and that's the proper title. Personally, I prefer to call it neurodiversity. Any of this is it's about having labels, and our society likes to label things, it's a way of getting funding, it's a way of understanding. I like, do you know Tony Attwood?
No.
I would suggest you have a look at him. He lives in Australia, but he's an expert, and he talks about people with Asperger's as Aspies, which I think maybe is much more comfortable.
Okay. Okay, now places like the student services, or places people with Asperger's can go if they need help, or like you said, they're feeling distressed. Those haven't always been around, have they?
No, they haven't always been around, and I think that's probably why there weren't so many students with Asperger's who came to university, because there weren't the services to help hold them. And so if things went wrong, they didn't survive. If they did get here, many people who with Asperger's would last a short time and then they'd leave because they felt that they couldn't cope, or they were distressed, or the situation would make them angry, and they say, I'm not staying, and then they would go. And the point of student services and learning support is that it makes that difference, so that students have got somewhere to go to or someone to talk to when it all becomes more than they can manage, or to even help them cope so they don't get into a place where they feel that they're not coping. So I think you would notice that it's been an improvement to have learning support, and it's meant that more people manage to stay on their courses, succeed, actually pass courses and do get better grades, because we've got that provision now.
Those lines, what else has been added in the last few years to help Asperger's, not just at university but in general?
I think assistive technology can be very useful, and in terms of recent developments you've got a lot there, and the internet can make a big difference. You can communicate via email or via Skype, which means that you don't always have to be there in a group. Do you find that that's helpful?
Yeah, I actually get more comfortable talking to people on Facebook because I don't have, or the internet, because I don't have to go through the whole omitting social cues thing.
Yes, and in terms of the way people deal, in terms of support to people with Asperger's, they understand better what they should and shouldn't do. You've got techniques like how to cope with someone when they go into meltdown, which people didn't have. And so we look at strategies for supporting students so that when things do go wrong, there's an expert, she's a university academic who does lectures all over the world. She's based in America, and she has someone who goes with her whenever she goes and delivers lectures. But if she gets into a situation she can't cope with, she'll go into a meltdown, and then when she does, she just walks and walks and just keeps going. And one particular instance, she kept walking and she actually walked into the Mississippi River, and they had to fish her out. And then the person who was her support worker had to meet her and talk her back into a place where she could cope and stop moving, really. So it's things like that. It's about understanding it better than we ever have, and putting things in place, really. There is a lack of understanding still, and the more people who can explain it, the more it's going to help people from now on and into the future. And it does make, as you say, the more understanding there is, the easier it makes people's lives, doesn't it? And the more we can accommodate people. One of the ways people find out about it is through fiction. So you've got The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time. And people read that book and felt, oh right, now I understand Asperger's. And what people needed to be told was, this is just one description of it. And there are other ways of understanding it. And it is different, as I said before, with everyone is individual. And I think it's okay that we need to accommodate children, but I think when people are adults, some people assume that you've got all the skills you need.
Or that you just grow out of it.
Yes. And it's something you as an Aspie, have to deal with every day, isn't it? And it means that everything that you do is much more effort than it is for other people. So it's much more tiring too. So it means you need to look after yourself more. But yes, so that everything you're doing is probably 10 times harder for you than it is for someone else. And because of the lack of understanding, people don't feel comfortable, and they may even feel anxious, so that they're not easy with you. And when you need space or whatever your need is, they need to be able to know what that need is and accommodate it. And people don't always. People are very often unsure and they don't know how to ask. Interesting, I think, that the British are very often described as being eccentric. And I often think that you could use that description for someone with Asperger's. So maybe the British are more Aspie than the rest of the world. Yeah, they tend to sort of, you think about, the people with their houses that they do up in funny ways, people who dress up in a peculiar fashion, or who run the flag up outside their house. You get much more of that sort of thing happening in Britain, where people sort of do things that don't quite conform. They suffer from these unwritten social rules as much as you do. It's a bit like when somebody dies, the person who's been widowed, people don't know how to talk to them. And so very often you'll find the reaction
because
of people.
for some weird reason we made sorry about your loss an insult.
Yes. And even once you said sorry for your loss, you don't know what to do after that. So the person goes on grieving, and other people who've been widowed or bereaved is another word, will have said that people who were their friends will cross the road to avoid them, so they don't have to talk to them because they don't know what to say. They don't know what's expected of them. So these unwritten social rules, or the social rules that you may think that people know and can work with, they don't serve for every occasion anyway. People are quite often thinking, I don't know how to deal with this. So it isn't easy.
I know, I guess in that sense, everyone's a little bit Asperger's.